And I know that Stanford has also taken the lead on even where you see the investments for the endowment and the school going, and how you can use those investments as a leverage to encourage companies to do more. As Zoe said, the electronics industry has really been targeted, and the IT and cell phone companies, but I was speaking earlier this month to the automotive industry. We're, as investors, looking to do a lot more outreach to aerospace, even toy manufacturers, medical devices. All these minerals are used in many, many products, and those companies all have to really step up to the plate and do take on their responsibility, as well as the mining companies themselves, and where they're able to contribute. So I mentioned the various civil society, and ensuring also that we're connecting with groups on the ground, and that we're really hearing what the groups on the ground want and what's best for them. And then I mentioned a couple of the different, not only the various governments, but I think where does the World Bank or even international financial institutions play a role in this as well. So what we've done in developing a multi-stakeholder approach, and I've also done this in the cotton industry, where there's forced child labor in the cotton industry, and we brought together NGOs, companies, as well as investors to really try to come up with some solutions. So the different strategies that are going on, which we've talked a little bit about, is a lot of the supply chain initiatives that Zoe pointed out. But on the policy and diplomacy front, it's contributing to this, how this legislation that's been passed in the U.S. is actually going to be implemented. And so I helped pull together a variety of NGOs, companies, and investors to come up with a consensus document where we actually agreed on how that law should be implemented. So it's the rules with the Security and Exchange Commission. So Enough Project has been part of those negotiations. We've spent hours and hours and hours on the telephone discussing all of these points very intimately. And one of the ways that we were able to come up with consensus where we could deliver it to the SEC is that we only delivered areas that we reached consensus on. So if there were issues where there were really two difference of opinions, we did not put that into our comments. And part of how we also approached it is many of the organizations decided to send comments to the SEC on their own, in addition to through the multi-stakeholder group. So we did put together comments coming from the investment community, for example. And so the way we said it is if there's issues that weren't brought up in the multi-stakeholder letter or recommendations, you can address those on your own. And so we didn't have to agree on every point. We just gave them the points that we did agree on, and that was a way that we wouldn't spend hours and hours just trying to, come up with a solution where really you had two different perspectives on how to approach that. But what we did ask is that everybody who signed on to the multi-stakeholder document for the SEC, that you didn't contradict what we had agreed to as a group in your own comments. Economic development is the kind of the third pillar here. We had a meeting last spring in Washington, D.C. with Business for Social Responsibility, and I helped put that together. And really realizing that we need capacity building, there needs to be empowerment of the people on the ground, both from a diplomacy point of view and how we can ensure that they're going to have fair and free elections there, and they feel empowered that they're in control of their own situation, their own country. And we know the need is great for roads and schools and hospitals and all of that kind of thing. And I think the opportunity is there to see where can we ensure that there are the resources going towards supporting people on the ground, in addition to the diplomacy and policy and supply chain responsibility. The other thing I want to say on diplomacy is that there's now other conversations going on. The State Department is also mentioned in the provision 1502, the Dodd-Frank Act. But we are looking as a multi-stakeholder group, again, to give guidance to the State Department. I mean, if we're going to them with one voice saying, these are the actions that you guys need to take, and when the NGOs have the companies sitting, with them, delivering the same message, it's a lot more powerful to the U.S. government than if the groups are contradicting one another, or, you're not sitting in the same room together. Zoe mentioned the various initiatives that are going on, so these do have some NGO input, and I'd like to see that be even more structured in the future. And the conflict-free smelter program, although it's being initiated by EICC and Jesse, because multiple industries need to have this type of integrity and that type of system around those smelters in their supply chain, I'd really like to see that also grow to be more multi-industry focused, which I think is really the intent, a couple of years from now. Or hopefully not even that far out, that would be pretty quick. And sorry, we did get here a little late. Was the whole provision 1502 spoken about more this morning? The whole U.S. law? You guys didn't hear much about that at all? Because I know we're kind of running out of time, so maybe we'll just go over it, super quick. So basically what it says is that companies have to do a responsible country of origin inquiry. No, first of all, you look and see, okay, do I have tin, tantalum, tungsten, or gold in my products? If I do, where is it coming from? If it's coming from the DRC or adjoining countries, you have to state the mine of origin. So as you can imagine, after hearing the complexity of the supply chain, that this is really a daunting task for companies to implement. And not only do you have to say where it's from, but you are also need to say in your conflict mineral report to the Security and Exchange Commission. And for those of you who don't know who that is, the SEC is where companies have to file their annual report every year. It's the organizing, the governing body through the U.S. government that manages publicly traded companies in the United States who are traded on the U.S. stock exchange. So you have to say whether or not any of your products are not DRC conflict-free. And that report has to be certified by a third-party auditor. So that's the other thing, is that you have somebody checking to ensure that all the information in there is accurate. So the proposed rules, draft rules came out in December, and so as they had public hearing, well, not a public hearing, but public input. So we gave input in November. Public rules came out in December, and then we gave input on those draft rules. The final rules are due out April 15th, but everybody's told us that that's going to be delayed. We're not sure how long. I've heard 30 to 90 days, so it could be as late as July, as early as May. But what part of that rule is also is that the reports, companies, it's their first fiscal year that they have to look and start gathering the data on, and then report, at the end of their first fiscal year after the rules come into existence. So, whether the rules come out in May or July, the first fiscal year, a lot of companies have January 1st is when their fiscal year starts. So it doesn't really matter when the rules come out. Starting January 1st, they have to really start tracking where all their minerals are coming from, and so that at the end of that year, they'll be able to put out a report saying, okay, we did all our due diligence, we did all our research, this is, what the situation is. So the groups that I had mentioned earlier in regards to agreeing to consensus and comments and recommendations to the Security and Exchange Commission, we had 7 corporations, 8 NGOs, and 9 investors who signed on to that document. And although it was, we worked closely with the IT and telecommunications industries, we also had Ford Motor Company and Medtronic, who's a big medical device manufacturer, as well as GE. And so we're really trying to say, okay, what are the concerns, and can we get agreement, multi-industry agreement, to how due diligence should be laid out, how country of origin, inquiry should be implemented.